Back in 2007, Apple didn't just give us a phone, they handed us the future in a shiny box. Every keynote felt like watching a magic trick, complete with Steve Jobs pulling world-changing ideas out of his black turtleneck. The motto was, "Think different." And for a while, they really did. The walled garden they built felt like paradise. Sleek design, flawless software, everything working together so smoothly, you almost forgot you were paying a premium just to be part of it. Fast forward to now, and the magic show's over. The revolutionary era has been swapped for quarterly earnings and safe bets. The walled garden, less like paradise, more like a luxury prison with a monthly subscription fee. You don't get seamless freedom anymore. You get seamless lock-in. Which leaves us with the real question. Did Apple stop thinking different and start thinking profit over product? That brings us to the iPhone 17, the latest proof. Apple loves to say every new iPhone is the best we've ever made, which is technically true. But the iPhone 17 lineup proves how little that actually means. The base models, same shape, same buttons. ProMotion finally made its way down to the entry phones, which would have been exciting years ago. Now it just feels late. Sure, the screen hits 3,000 nits, selfies jump to 24 megapixels, and the chip is 20% faster, which means smoother scrolling and slightly prettier TikToks. Hardly history-making. The Pro models? Apple dropped titanium and went back to aluminum. Yes, it's lighter, but it also feels like a downgrade. They bragged about a new vapor cooling system and 40% better sustained performance, which is great if you're stress testing your phone with video edits. But most people will just see the giant raised camera plateau, which looks less premium and more like a metal blister glued to the back. If your headline feature is a zoom upgrade, you're not exactly pushing the frontier. And then there's the iPhone Air, just 5.6 millimeters thin, the slimmest iPhone Apple's ever made. On paper, that sounds groundbreaking. In practice, it means a weaker battery, no M-Wave 5G, and heat issues reviewers are already flagging. The price tag starts at $999, and if that battery doesn't hold up, Apple's more than happy to sell you a $100 MagSafe pack. That's not innovation. That's upselling your own mistake. Some reviewers have already called it a red flag device. And honestly, they're right. But here's the bigger problem. The iPhone 17 isn't an outlier. It's the pattern. Once upon a time, every iPhone launch felt like an earthquake. The iPhone X dropped in 2017, and suddenly the future was here. No home button, Face ID, edge-to-edge screen. Bold, risky, different. Now, the yearly iPhone upgrade feels more like a weather report. Slightly thinner, titanium edges, a battery that lasts 5% longer if you squint. Apple slaps a four-figure price tag on it and calls it a revolution. Consumers aren't blind. They're spending $1,000 for what amounts to last year's phone with a shinier coat of paint. Meanwhile, competitors aren't waiting around. Samsung and Google are making AI assistants that can summarize your meetings and plan your week. Apple's still stuck with Siri, who can barely set a timer without acting confused. It's like showing up to a Formula One race with a tricycle and insisting it's refined. And when Apple does swing for a next big thing, we get the Vision Pro, a $3,500 headset that reviewers loved for 5 minutes, until demand flatlined. What was hyped as the dawn of spatial computing now looks more like a glorified dev kit gathering dust. And here's where the cycle gets even uglier. Apple doesn't just run on weak innovation. It runs on psychological obsolescence. The moment a new iPhone drops, last year's model suddenly feels worthless. That's not an accident. It's the result of Apple's reliance on psychological obsolescence and price anchoring. Take the iPhone 17 Pro, launched at $1,099. That price immediately sets the new bar. It tells the market, this is the real flagship. And overnight, the iPhone 16 Pro, which cost $999 literally yesterday, gets mentally downgraded to mid-tier. Same phone, still perfectly capable, but in the consumer's mind, it just lost its crown. Then the resale market turns that perception into reality. Thousands of early adopters rush to trade in their iPhone 16s for credit toward the 17, flooding the market with supply. Too many used phones, not enough demand, and values crash. Within days, trade-in prices can drop by 25% or more. Owners feel it twice. Psychologically, their phone is old, and financially, its resale value just collapsed. This is how Apple keeps the upgrade treadmill running. But here's the irony. In the long run, this destroys trust. People don't feel like they're buying timeless devices anymore. They feel like they're renting relevance at $1,000 a year. That's not brand loyalty. That's brand fatigue. If psychological obsolescence keeps Western buyers stuck on Apple's treadmill, it's a completely different story in China, Apple's most important overseas market. And it's here where the cracks in their strategy are showing the fastest. Chinese consumers aren't playing Apple's game anymore. Local champs like Huawei, Xiaomi, and Oppo are cranking out foldables that actually fold, batteries that last days, and charging speeds so fast they make Apple's all-day battery life look like a bad joke. And they're selling them for a fraction of the iPhone's price. Then comes the political layer. The Chinese government has been nudging citizens toward domestic brands, framing it as both national pride and economic strategy. Every Huawei bought is one less dollar leaving China for Cupertino. Add in the broader geopolitical storm clouds over U.S. companies, and Apple looks less like a premium player and more like an overpriced outsider, trying to sell bottled water in the middle of a flood. But Apple? Stubborn as ever. Year after year, it's still the same mantra. Slightly thinner, slightly shinier rectangles. And sticking to that mantra has made the grip Apple once had on Asia feel as fragile as holding an iPhone without a case. One slip, one stumble, and the whole thing shatters. Investors see it too. Apple's market share in China slid to just 13.7% in early 2025, a steep drop from its peak. Competitors are stealing the buffet, and Apple's response? To polish the silverware and hope no one notices the food is gone. That's what their keynotes feel like now. Apple events once broke the internet, streaming servers would buckle, social feeds would light up, and journalists treated each launch like scripture. But at the iPhone 17 event, when Tim Cook stood on stage and declared, "We're raising the bar," the innovation he revealed was shaving off exactly 1 milligram of weight. 1 milligram. The kind of difference you'd need a lab scale to even notice. Instead of applause, the internet laughed. The new orange phone was instantly branded a traffic cone. The raised camera plateau? A pasta strainer. Within hours, Apple's billion-dollar marketing push had been rewritten into memes. And that's the real problem. Because memes aren't just jokes, they shape perception. Apple built its brand on being aspirational. But when every new iPhone trends because it's funny, not because it's groundbreaking, the premium image starts to crack. Why pay $1,200 for a product the internet has already turned into a punchline? Even Wall Street is noticing. In 2024, Apple slipped from first to third in global market cap. Not a collapse, but a signal. The company that once dictated culture now gets dictated by culture. Apple still prints money, but the aura is fading. The keynote that used to feel like a holiday now feels like an annual roast. Apple isn't being destroyed by Samsung, Huawei, or anyone else. It's managing to do the job perfectly well on its own. The company that once made people camp out overnight for a glimpse of the future is now bragging about shaving off a milligram and repainting the same rectangle pumpkin orange. Sure, the cash registers are still ringing, but at this point, Apple's biggest innovation might be convincing people to keep paying more for less. So, what do you think? Is Apple's golden age over? Or do they still have one more thing left in them? Drop your thoughts in the comments. But hey, maybe it's time you figured out how to control your money. That's why I made this simple finance budgeting template. Just plug in your income and expenses, and it shows you exactly where your money's going. No confusing apps, no subscriptions, just one clean sheet to finally get your finances together. And here's the best part. It's free. Or if you want to support us, you can pay whatever you want. Start building your first real budget today. Links below.